How many of us have them? Friends. Yeah. Ones we can depend on. Friends. What about your friends? Are they gonna be around? Probably not. Let's get into it. Watch me as I break this thing down. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Stand on Business. On this episode, we're talking about friends. So I've always been a good person, but I've also always been a horrible friend. And maybe you have too. Not because I've had bad intentions, but because I had a lot of trauma. I was always going through something crazy, like something beyond my control. I was always in survival mode growing up. And truth is, I didn't really learn how to be a friend, how to choose people, how to make choices in general until I left college and spent years alone. And I think that's true for a lot of us. We just are put in rooms with people and take it from there. We're not taught how to make choices that are best for us. In my trauma and need to survive, I learned to be a people pleaser. I learned to give people what they wanted so that I had as little problems as possible, right? So the problem with that and being a people pleaser is in friendships, you then become the enabler, right? So the people pleaser becomes the enabler. The one who is never honest about how they truly feel and will never stop someone from being self-destructive. I got yelled at enough for giving my honest opinion. And I learned to just keep things to myself and let people do what they're going to do to a fault. So, there's no community here or base for friendship, only survival, delusion, and fake support if I'm being real. I'm going to let you do whatever you're going to do because you're not going to argue with me. To me, that's not real love and that's not being a real friend. That is just, it's hard, right? Because you have to give people their space. You have to give people their right to live. Like, you're not their teacher or parent or whatever, right? But there's a certain balance that comes with being a supportive friend versus being an enabler. And I think we know when we're crossing those lines or when we're not doing enough or when we're just allowing shit to happen because we just don't want to deal with it. Right? I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that doesn't necessarily make you the best friend. It makes you an enabler. The next thing, right? So now we have the people pleaser that turned into enabler. Then we have the love bomber, right? I was a love bomber. I felt like I had to do so much. Like host people, cook for them, buy snacks, entertain everyone, make everyone feel good and comfortable, make sure, I heard everybody out. And, the problem was what happens when you throw a bomb into the ocean, right? You're not targeting anything. You're not fixing anything. You and your friend are barely feeling anything. Things become routine and expected, often unreciprocated, and this causes resentment in you when you're setting unrealistic expectations, right? Doing the most and hoping someone else does the same for you without communicating that. You are, one, trying to fill a void in yourself and your friends that you can't fill because you didn't create it. And two, yes, you want them to be happy, but those moments are fleeting because in reality, you're not the source of the problem. And you're not even letting them express things. You're just trying to fix everything and do as much as you can to be happy and be overstimulated and spark those dopamine hits and let's go to the park and let's go out and let's do this. Let's go out for drinks. Let's eat. watch TV. I have food made for y'all. Like, it was just a lot. So, yes, you want them to be happy. But those moments are fleeting because in reality, the daily chaos, the toxic family members, the other sources of their unhappiness become apparent, and you can't fix that with a love bomb. You really need to care. You need time. You need to talk. You need to suggest things and get messy and be willing to do that. You may or may not want to do that depending on the person's willingness to grow or your actual ability to give. That's real. So, okay, we have the people pleaser that became the enabler. We have the love bomber that is just all over the place. You're not doing anything. We're not addressing the real problem. We're just stuck in the feel-goodism of everything and trying to escape. So the love bomber becomes the escape artist, essentially. Then we have the fixer. I thought of myself as the fixer, even though I was often uninformed and afraid to ask questions, right? I was afraid to ask the questions that mattered before jumping into whatever was self-serving at the moment. And what I mean by that is when you grow up in a toxic household with a lot of crazy toxic family members, you're often made to feel small, incapable, stupid. You're ridiculed for asking questions and mocked for not knowing something and making a mistake in the same breath. So you grow up pretending. You pretend you know everything. You pretend you have all the answers. Pretending you have everything figured out. I wanted to fix everything. But you have to let people live, make their own choices, make mistakes, learn, create their own patterns and things that work for them, and respect and honor that, right? Or if you don't, disassociate because you guys are no longer in alignment. In a friendship, being the fixer makes you unbearable. You become the one who interjects and doesn't listen, undermines and doesn't realize, and insults without feeling there's a need to apologize because you're teaching. And finally, we have the good old ride or die. We are literally programmed and conditioned to be ride or die, especially by the people who make the dumbest decisions. Like, I learned early on, I'm not a ride or die. And that concept is so dangerous for people like me because I will be fully invested in someone's potential and in seeing the good in them, so much so that I'll ignore the fuck out of the monster that's quite literally trying to kill me. I'm the kid that says, monsters have a heart too, right? Fuck that. As an adult, I needed to grow up to be the person with discernment. Although all people are born neutral and inherently good, in my opinion, bad behavior is learned, repeated, and continuously chosen. There are people actively trying to change, right? So there are people out there that are trying to get better. I'm not saying you can't change. But there's also people who like to talk about changing because they like how it feels with absolutely no intention of changing at all. And we know who those people are. We give them chance and chance and chance again. They don't change, but we have a soft spot in our heart. Whoever that is, you need to disassociate. That ride or die, that die part definitely exists. And it will happen. Your spirit will die. Your dreams will die. Your hope. All of that, right? You need to be around people that fuel and feed you. I'm currently finishing my book, Pounds of Pain, where I'm going to get into all of these stories behind these concepts because it's a lot. And I think that all of the mistakes that I've made and things that I've learned over the years can really help people. And it's things that people are often embarrassed to talk about that I think need to be said out loud, right? Because, like, where's the cautionary tales? Where are the lessons for people to learn, like the little micro details that count? Notice those micro details and adjust yourself accordingly, right? While being true to yourself. Well, that's the key. That's the key to unlocking a truly free and fulfilling life, in my opinion. But for now, let's get into what makes a good friend versus what makes a bad one. Because if you really think about it, we were never actually taught discernment, how to figure out who's compatible for us or not. And I say compatible instead of good or bad because in reality, we're like all one decision away from being a serial killer at all times, literally. It's just about choices and beliefs, which seem to be pretty variable nowadays. So if you think about it, right, we were never taught how to choose people, how to analyze people, how to make good decisions. We were just told to make things work with whoever was in our group for a group project, whoever we were in school with, in class with, at lunch with, church, ultimately whoever our parents or guardians said that we could be around. In college, some of us isolated, some of us fed into peer pressure, and some became bullies, and the others just healed and disappeared completely. So, yeah. Let's explore what makes a good friend good according to the internet. So we can start to figure out who we are actually compatible with versus who we are trying to use to fill these little voids we have in us. No shade, no tea. A good friend isn't just someone who hangs around you. You feel their presence even when they're not there. They're the ones who make you feel safe about being your full, unfiltered self. You feel like you never have to hide. Here are some of the key things that make a friend truly stand out. Trust and reliability. They keep your secrets. They follow through on promises. And they are someone you can count on. Whether things are falling apart or falling into place, right? No conditional friendships. They're here through the good times and the bad times, respectfully, with their boundaries, though, because you're also not putting too much on them. And they keep your secrets. That's a big one, because I really hate when I tell someone something and I feel like I become national news. Like I'm just giving you something else to talk about with other people in your life. I am not a fucking topic of conversation. I am trusting you with my secrets. We are supposed to be here to talk amongst one another. If I give you permission to talk about my shit, then that's fine. Other than that, nah, you're supposed to be keeping it to yourself. So that's really important for me. Following through on promises. I understand sometimes shit happens. Life is crazy. So we have to give ourselves grace with this. But if someone is repeatedly making promises and breaking them consistently, when you see that they're being consistent in other places for other people, that is a big sign to detach, disassociate. The next one is emotional intelligence. Good friends can read the room. They notice when you're off. They listen to you without needing to fix everything, so they're not the fixer. And they validate your feelings rather than dismissing them. That's important. They really just listen. I'm going to do a whole episode on just how to listen because we're not taught how to listen either. Next, honesty and kindness. They'll tell you the truth, even if it's hard to hear. But they'll do it with care, not cruelty. That's the difference. Because some narcs, some manipulators, they're like, I'm going to give you the harsh truth because I care about you. Nah, they're using a good concept and corrupting it to control and manipulate you. This happens often. We have to be aware when that's happening. Versus when someone actually is being considerate of us and just being straight up. That's important. Supports without judgment. Whether you're chasing your dreams or making mistakes, they're your cheerleader, not your critic. They'll remind you of your worth when you forget. So again, slippery slope. But you know when someone is being healthy, you know when someone's supporting you versus when someone is being an enabler and they're just allowing you to do whatever. Or when you're allowing the people in your life to just do whatever. Mutual effort. A solid friendship is two-sided. They reach out too. It's not always on you. for me, this was a big thing. I feel like I used to always beat myself up because I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to, again, fill all these little voids that I never got in my family. I wanted to feel like I was needed. I wanted to feel like I could do things for the people I love, right? But you never really get that in return. You're just doing it. So, real friends, they reach out. They remember the little things. You don't have to do too much. You don't have to see me every day or even call me every week, but a check-in every now and then. Like, whatever works for you and your friend, that is to be established. Me, I'm not someone that needs to reach out all the time. People don't understand that about me. They hate that. They be like, you're distant. No, I'm just going through a lot. I'm processing. It takes me a lot. I get emotionally overwhelmed a lot. So I just, I isolate. I'm working on reaching out to people now that I have better people in my life and I've learned to choose better. But also, it's about balance. You don't want to overburden people, but you also want to connect. Mutual effort. So just constant consideration. Then we have growing together, right? They grow with you, not away from you. That's important. That's real important. Because life changes, and a good friend adapts, evolves, and continues to find space for the bond. Even if the relationship isn't the same, it will evolve. You will still have them in your lives. They won't completely excommunicate you. Now, if you guys genuinely grow apart, that is fine. That's different. That doesn't make someone a bad friend when you were friends if you guys grew apart. It just means you guys are no longer friends or at that place. That's fine. If you think I'm missing any, leave them in the comments, right? What would you say defines a good friend? Truth is, everyone wants to be a good friend. No one intentionally tries to be a bad friend. A lot of times, we're merely echoing the love we never got and the toxic replacements we were given instead. I grew up raised by a single father, my grandmother, in the streets of Newark. My father always told me repeatedly, you don't need friends, they're a waste of time and money, often referring to his years of throwing huge parties for the block, only to have never been invited out to weddings and birthday parties and, always being involved in some mess. If the friend did come around, it was always bad news or there was always some kind of, drug problem or issue and that he had to deal with. So it was always ever since I was a little kid, it was that trauma transferred over and that perspective of friends are burdens and just, understanding that even though there were some examples of that in my dad's life, he too had no discernment. We were just around the people we were around, and that was that. So that is going to lead to toxic bonds and lots of problems. This does not mean the world is all messed up and there are no good people out there. Because I think oftentimes we grow up and experience trauma and feel like, well, that's that. And that's just the truth and that's the core of the world. When that's not true. That's a choice that we're making to only see those parts. So it's really about, again, how do you make the decision of who's a friend and who's not, who's compatible and who's not. Recognizing a bad friend isn't always easy, especially when the red flags come wrapped in nostalgia or shared history. But when you step back, certain patterns can reveal a friendship that's more draining than nourishing. So here's some signs to watch out for when trying to decide if someone is a bad friend. 1, it's always about them. They dominate every conversation. They downplay your problems. They make your struggles about their own. You leave interactions feeling smaller, unheard, or emotionally depleted. That one is pretty straight to the point. I know we've all had examples of trying to talk to somebody and somehow we end up talking about them. And what you said has been lost in the wind. right? What you said matters and should be acknowledged, respected, interacted with, spoken for. The next thing is lack of respect for boundaries. They ignore your needs, they push your limits, or guilt you into doing things. Now, we had a whole episode about guilt and manipulation, so I know y'all know a little something about guilt. So they ignore your needs, they push your limits, or guilt you into doing things. No doesn't seem to register, or worse, no becomes a challenge to them. No should just be no. Period. No explanation needed. Inconsistency and fakeness. Their behavior changes depending on who's around. They may act warm and cool with you in private, but distant or mocking in group settings. Be careful for that. Be careful. Watch out for that. We know what that is too. And then you try to give them benefit of the doubt like, oh, they just people pleasing, but they not trying to please you because you're not their people. So think about that. Who's the priority in what moments? You should be loved out loud all the time. Period. Conditional support. They're only present when it benefits them. Or they disappear during your lows. True friendship doesn't hinge on your usefulness. You should not bail out on your friend the minute they're depressed. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sit in their trauma with them and their sadness with them. But that does mean you should check in. That does mean you should ask them if they need anything. That does mean you should try your best to be there within your own boundaries while still honoring you. Because it's still about balance. They create drama, not peace. Gossip, 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 girl. Damn. They love to gossip. Backhanded compliments. They love stirring up conflict. They love little passive-aggressive competitions and comments. And they love playing people against each other. It is not flair. It is not confidence. It is mean girl energy. It is toxicity. And it is stupid. Finally, they make you question your worth. If you feel anxious around them, if you second guess yourself, if you feel like you're walking on eggshells to try to not make them angry, triggered, disappointed, cry, or jealous, that's not emotional safety. That's manipulation or undermining. Your friend should never feel jealous of you, right? Your friend should never make you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You should feel free. You should never feel anxious or uncomfortable. That is what an acquaintance. That is just another person. That is not your friend. And honestly, life's too short to be in uncomfortable situations around stuffy, uncomfortable ass people. Stand on that. So what are the effects that toxic friendships have? Because toxic friendships can erode your mental and emotional well-being, often without you realizing the full impact until you're already too deep in it. You can have PTSD from manipulative and toxic friendships. That is a fact, right? You have increased anxiety and stress. Constant tension, unpredictability, or emotional manipulation can keep your nervous system on high alert. You feel anxious before seeing them, or replay conversations in your head afterward over and over, wondering what went wrong or what you could have done better to not trigger them. Fuck that. Walk away. Next, lowered self-esteem. When a friend regularly criticizes you, belittles you, or dismisses you in a way that chips away at your confidence, right? Over time, you may start to internalize some of their negativity without even realizing it and start doubting your worth. Time to exit expeditiously. Stand on it. Emotional exhaustion. Toxic dynamics are draining. You might feel like you're always walking on eggshells, managing their moods, or giving more than what you get. That imbalance leaves you feeling depleted, right? And eventually resentful. We out of here. Stand on it. Identity confusion. You're constantly adjusting who you are to avoid conflict or to gain approval. You can lose touch with your authentic self. Remember in episode 0 where I was talking about assimilating and constantly just, you know, being a mirror of the people and whoever's in front of you as opposed to being yourself. How that causes you to lose yourself and never actually develop because you're always changing. You're not being authentic. So that's important, right? Identity confusion is a big symptom and issue when it comes to toxic friendships. You're always trying to be more like them to gain their approval and you lose yourself. Typical mean girl effect. This can lead to confusion about your values, make you more susceptible to peer pressure. This leads you confused about your needs, and it leads you to question your boundaries. The next symptom is depression and loneliness. Ironically, toxic friendships can make you feel more alone than actually being alone. The emotional disconnection, the lack of support, can contribute to feeling sad, feeling hopeless, feeling isolated, feeling rejected, even more so than you would just being alone. So you're better off alone than with that toxic ass friend. Stand on that. And finally, hypervigilance and trauma responses. In extreme cases, especially if the friendship involved manipulation, betrayal, or emotional abuse, you might develop trauma-like symptoms including hypervigilance. You know, I gotta slow that shit down. Hypervigilance, where you're just overly aware, overly on top of stuff. You can never calm down. You're always in survival mode. You're always looking around. It's just like you're always on high alert. Avoidance or difficulty trusting others, which means later on in life, you end up feeling negatively towards friendships and you might miss out on making genuinely good connections with people that are actually more compatible with you and more in alignment with you. So we don't want that to happen, right? Don't let your negative experiences with toxic friends and your inability to discern who was good or bad for you at that time, who was compatible with you at that time, to take away from the growth you've had, right, since then, your ability to now choose better for yourself because you know yourself better, and your ability to find people in alignment with you and your boundaries. You deserve that, if that's something that you want. So letting go of a toxic friend can feel like a loss, but it's not. It's a super, super powerful act of self-love and self-respect, in my opinion. All right. So let's end this episode off on a good note, right? So what do you feel when you're in a good friendship? What does a good friend make you feel like or should feel like? Because it's hard to say like this thing makes someone a good friend because culturally everyone's different. Everyone likes different things. We are not all the same people. So it's about compatibility. I would say we can trust feelings. The feelings that we get are fundamental. The feelings that we get are similar, no matter what triggers those feelings specifically, if that makes sense. So I think figuring out what things should feel like is even better than what we think things should look like. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I said that right. Okay. Healthy friendships feel like a deep exhale after holding your breath for mad long. You feel safe. You feel seen. You feel supported just by being around the person. You feel at ease. You don't have to censor your thoughts or second guess your every word. You know they're going to communicate with you. You feel at comfort and ease, and you flow naturally, even in silence. Next. Reciprocity without scorekeeping. Both of you invest in the relationship. Sometimes one gives more, sometimes the other, but over time, there's a balance of effort, attention, and care. Stand on it. Next. Active listening and empathy. They don't just wait for their turn to speak because they're thinking about all the things that they're going to respond. They genuinely listen to you and hear you. And you can feel the difference. You can feel when someone's just, brewing up their own responses versus actually taking in what you're giving them. And when you're hurting, they don't brush it off. They sit with you in it. Or if you're soaking, they will respectfully tell you you have to pull out of it because they love you. Boundaries are respected, not resented. I'm going to say that again. Boundaries are respected, not challenged or resented. Whether it's time, space, or emotional needs, a healthy friend doesn't guilt trip you for drawing the line. They honor it. They don't challenge you or question you. They honor it. Stand on it. Period. Next. You feel uplifted, not diminished. They celebrate your wins with you, support your growth, and remind you of who you are when you forget and you feel down. Your light doesn't threaten them. It reflects off of them. Your light doesn't threaten them. It reflects off of them, just like theirs reflects off of you. Okay? Stand on it. I got 2 more for y'all, okay? Appreciate y'all for still being with me. Conflict is handled with maturity. Disagreements don't become battlegrounds. You can talk through things, apologize, and grow stronger afterward. Not walk away wounded and confused. Now, I'm still working on this because I am hot-headed. I'm full of rage. I was never really taught emotional regulation, so I'm learning that in my adult years. And I'm very grateful. I have a patient and loving partner who's been growing with me over these years. And we've been learning that together. So, how to handle conflict with maturity. And finally, it's happened to me. Sorry. Okay, no. Consistency over time. Their presence isn't just situational or seasonal. They show up time after time. Time after time. See, I have a problem. Phrases trigger songs, and I just want to sing all the time. It's ridiculous. It's like a walking meme in my head. Just ridiculous. Anyway, their presence isn't just situational or seasonal. They show up time after time. Not just when it's convenient. Stand on it. We standing on everything positive this year. What's up? So what I'm standing on is there is hope, people. There is hope. I went from trauma bonds to healing bonds to growth journeys to life journeys with people that really get it. By intentionally listening, by being intentional, listening, by showing love and slowly appreciating people for who they are, not what they can provide, by really seeing people. There's hope. You got to get better. They got to get better. We all getting better. It's a journey. It's a process, and it's all okay. But it's also okay to stand on business and kick those bad friends the fuck out of your life. And if you're the bad friend, figure out why you are being a bad friend. That's it for now, y'all. I appreciate y'all for standing on business with me. I hope we're still friends after this episode. You feel me? I'm getting better. I've always been a good person, but I haven't always been the best friend. I'm learning. I'm working on it. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Love y'all.